Theodore. He's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore likes to do the things that friendly tugboats do.
Hello. Oh, look at this. My trusty tuba. You know, there's nothing I like better than blowing my tuba first thing in the morning. Oh, I love the way that it echoes through the big harbor. 1, 2. What's that noise? No. Well, look at that. Look at that. There's a new ship in the harbor. And I think he wants to blow his whistle along with my tuba. You know, I'm not sure I really want to play with anybody. George would know what to say. Hey, George likes to make new friends. He didn't always. Have I ever told you that story?
It was a busy morning in the big harbor. A big ship was arriving, and Theodore, George, and Hank were just getting ready to bring her into her dock. It was time for George's favorite move. First, vrooming his engine as he sped up and swung toward the ship. Then he swooshed to a stop, vrooming his engine and blowing up smoke just to make sure everyone was watching. But nobody was. "Hey," said Hank, "who's that?"
Who's what?
Growled George. It was a ship. She was about the same size and shape as the tugboats, but different. "She has a helicopter," said Hank, sounding very impressed. "She looks friendly," said Theodore.
Oh, we have plenty of friends already.
Said George. You see, George was usually only interested in, well, George.
Come on,
He commanded.
let's get this big ship in.
The next morning, the dispatcher sent Theodore and George to move Owen, the oil rig, out on the ocean. "Moving Owen is going to be fun," shouted Theodore. And he swayed from side to side a little, the way he did when he was especially happy. Soon, the tugs could see the giant oil rig.
Well, howdy-doody there, boys.
Hollered Owen.
Sure is nice to see you again. Things were getting a tad quiet around here. Yes, sirree, Bob.
Theodore grinned to himself. He couldn't imagine it ever being quiet anywhere Owen was. George smiled a big George smile. This was a great chance to do his favorite move right in front of Big Owen. First, he sped up and swung towards him. Then, he swooshed to a stop, vrooming his engine and blowing up smoke just to make sure everyone was watching. But no one was.
Say, who's that over there?
Roared Owen. "It's that new ship again," said Theodore. George glared towards the new ship. It seemed everyone was always watching her when he was trying to do his favorite move. "Excuse me, Owen," called the ship in a polite voice. "My name is Sigrid, and I'm your new supply ship."
Now, isn't that just Jim Dandy?
Yelled Owen. Well, Sigrid was so startled her helicopter almost fell off her deck. "Owen is kind of loud," whispered Theodore. "Hi, I'm Theodore." "Hello," replied Sigrid, and then she turned to George, waiting for him to say something.
Oh, hello,
grunted George. "I have some supplies for your trip," Sigrid called up to Owen.
You bet you do,
Bellowed Owen.
I'll lower my cable and haul him right up.
Sigrid began to move into place beneath the giant oil rig, just as quick and nimble as could be.
Boy, she's faster than a greased catfish,
Shouted Owen.
I can do that.
Mumbled George.
Sometimes.
Can you go sideways like that too? Asked Theodore.
Going sideways is easy,
Replied George. I've never seen you do it before, Theodore went on. But George pretended he was looking at some interesting waves. Owen quickly hauled up his supplies and Sigrid turned to go. Then she turned back to Owen again. I want to make sure you have enough cables, she said. I'll bring you some extra ones tomorrow.
Well, that's a Jim Dandy idea there, Sigrid.
Hollered Owen.
Yes, sirree, Bob.
Goodbye, Theodore. Goodbye, George, called Sigrid.
Say, that Sigrid's ultra super.
Boomed Owen.
And so nice and quiet. Well, going sideways is easy,
Replied George. That evening, all the tugs were gathered at the great ocean dock. It was their favorite time, storytelling time. George was telling everyone about moving Owen.
Theodore and I moved Owen half the way today,
Said George in his most important sounding voice.
and tomorrow we'll finish moving him the rest of the way. Owen is as heavy as 1,000 whales.
George roomed his engine and began to blow up smoke, pretending he was pulling Owen. There's that new ship again, said Hank. She doesn't say very much, said Theodore, but she's very nice. Theodore thought Sigrid looked kind of lonely at her dock all by herself.
Owen must be as heavy as 3 supertankers all squished together.
George was beginning to tell a story again. Maybe Sigrid would like to be our friend, thought Theodore. But it seemed that George didn't even notice Sigrid was in the harbor. The next day, Theodore and George set off to finish moving Owen. A summer storm was gathering further out on the ocean, tossing up big waves. George was getting ready to do his favorite move to get into position beside Owen.
You boys catch your breath a moment.
Bellowed the big rig.
Here comes Sigrid with my supplies.
Good morning, called Sigrid.
Howdy doody there, Sigrid.
Roared Owen in his ultra-loudest voice.
Say, isn't this just a Jim Dandy day?
Hi, Sigrid, answered Theodore. George didn't say anything. You see, he was worried that, once again, no one would watch him do his favorite move. Sigrid began getting into position, and Owen lowered his cable. Theodore floated closer. He was determined to make friends with Sigrid, even if George wasn't. Working with Owen is the best, isn't it? He said. So nice and quiet, grinned Sigrid, making a little joke. Owen began to haul up his supplies. His big cable swayed this way and that in the heavy wind. I'm finished, Owen, called Sigrid. Have a safe trip.
Say, that storm is really blowing in.
Yelled Owen. Maybe we should ask Sigrid to help, Theodore called to George. Oh, said Sigrid, turning right away. I'd really like to help. Just then, a big wave washed right up on George's deck. George knew that it really would be tough tugging out on the ocean today.
Well, hurry up and get ready, if you want,
He mumbled. And that's when the most surprising thing happened. First, Sigrid sped up and swung towards Owen. Then she swooshed to a stop right beside the big rig. It was the same as George's favorite move. Well, no one spoke for a moment.
Where'd you learn to do that?
George said at last. Oh, replied Sigrid. I always do that. But, said George slowly, that's what I do. Theodore was sure George was getting ready to bust a bumper. You see, George was very proud of his favorite move. But what happened next was even more surprising.
Well,
Said George after a moment.
it's a pretty good move.
It's my favorite, said Sigrid. And then George sped up and swung towards Owen, booming his engine and blowing up smoke. And swooshed to a stop right beside the big rig. That was great, shouted Sigrid.
Well, thank you.
Smiled George. And I really like the way you make that sound with your engine, Sigrid went on. Could you show me how you do that later?
Oh, sure.
Said George modestly.
It's pretty easy once you know how.
And then he blew his whistle as a signal for everyone to start moving Owen. You know, George called quietly to Theodore, Sigrid seems pretty nice. It was almost sundown by the time the tugs and Sigrid had finished moving Owen and returned to the big harbor. They could see the other tugboats already gathered at the great ocean dock for storytelling time. Good night, Theodore. Good night, George, called Sigrid, beginning to float towards her own dock. It was nice working with you today. Good night, Sigrid, called Theodore. It was nice working with you, too.
Sigrid?
Shouted George suddenly.
Sigrid?
Yes, George?
I was just wondering if you'd like to come back to our dock and tell stories with us.
Oh, that would be great, said Sigrid.
And I was also wondering,
Continued George.
if sometime you could show me how to go sideways?
Sure I could, smiled Sigrid. Everyone turned together towards the great ocean dock. Theodore began to sway from side to side, the way he always did when he was especially happy. And so did George and Sigrid, because they were especially happy too. You know, that story about George and Sigrid, well, it helped me make up my mind about that new ship in the harbor. The one that wants to blow its whistle along with my tuba playing. Ahoy, friends! Welcome to the big harbor. I think he's happy to be here. And you know, I'm happy you could be here with us today, too. Thanks for visiting with me, and I'll see you again real soon. Come on, everyone. Let's play one together. A 1, 2, 3. The more, the merrier.